Hi everyone, welcome back. So the first thing we're going to do is just start up Unity here, and we'll create a new project. I'll call it Breakout Tutorial. You can name it whatever you like. I'm actually going to keep my template as 3D, mostly just because I like the 2.5D effect that having a 3D project gives you. So that's me. So yeah, we'll be learning the 3D template. I wouldn't change it to 2D because there's probably going to be some major differences if you were to do that. So from there, we will go ahead and create our project. Give it a minute here. All right, and we have our scene. If you're new to Unity, I'll just quickly go ahead and go over the layout of Unity 3D. So over here on the left, we have our hierarchy, which is everything that is in our scene. Up here, we actually have our scene view, which you can move around and, you can see all the objects that are in the scene. In order to move quickly, if you have the mouse right-clicked while you're in your scene, if you move your mouse around, it'll rotate the camera around. And if you press W, S, A, or D, it'll actually move your scene view camera for you. And then if your mouse is over the scene view, you can use the mouse wheel to scroll. And then the left click just selects things. So that's an overview of the scene view. Down here I have it set to my game view, but we have a couple of tabs. Over here is project and then console, most of which we'll be using these three tabs a lot. And then on the right we have our inspector, which if I click something in here, you can see all the components that are added to my main camera object, for instance. Speaking of the main camera object, we will be making a game that looks more or less 2D, so in order to create that effect, we really don't want the sky in the background over here, so what we could do is come over here to our camera, under clear flags, set it from skybox to solid color, and that'll give us a nice blue background. I personally don't like the blue background, so I will click this background right here in the color and just drag it down to black. I like black. I like the black background. And after we've done this, we're going to just press Control S to save our scene, and I will just name it main. There, it'll take it a second to load, and if you come over here to the project, you can see main is now saved. So back to our game view. So the first thing we really want to make, let's go ahead and make our paddle. So up here on the top in the toolbar, let's go to Game Object, 3D Object, and let's make a cube. Okay. Just go ahead and just center it out there, put it on the origin. 0, 0, 0. Looks good. So let's see where we want it to be at here. Okay, somewhere around right there looks nice. Let's give it a good scale. Start with the Y. And down a little bit. Ooh, a little too far. Let's keep it somewhere around 0.1. Looks good. Not too big, not too small. And the Z-axis, we definitely want to put it really small, so let's just go ahead and put it at somewhere like 0.1 as well. And I do this over here just because I like to have a good, yeah, I like to have just good like whole numbers or even numbers. So for the X, it's definitely a little too small, so let's just double it to maybe 2. Okay, and after our resizing, we've seen it's kind of been put a little offset, so I'll just go down here and drag it on down to, yeah, maybe about -4.5. Looks good. Since we're at 2 now, it looks a little off-centered though, so let's try somewhere about, yeah, negative 0.75 looks good enough. It'll work. Okay, so now we have our paddle. No functionality or anything yet, but it's there. It's looking good. Come over here and rename it to paddle. And okay, so let's move on from there. We'll go ahead and create our brick object next. We'll go ahead and do the same thing up here. We'll just game object, 3D object, cube. Let's center it out just so we can kind of look at it here. Let's first of all make the scale what we want it to be. So what I would do is maybe come up here in the right here. We'll just look at it. Let's see. I want it to be about, I don't know. That looks good. So maybe like 0.3. And then in the Z, we definitely want it to be small, so maybe kind of keep it uniform with the Y, but a little less, so 0.03. Yeah, that looks about good. And for our scale in the x-axis, which is left and right, maybe I want it just about 1/3 bigger than what it actually is right now. That looks pretty good. I like this. Yeah, I can keep that. I'll just come over here and name it brick. And then we'll kind of just position it where we want it on the screen. So let's say I want it to start at maybe -10.5. Yeah. And in the y-axis, maybe we'll do it just a little bit higher at maybe 6.4. That looks good. So this is where our very first brick will be laid. So say we want about 10 rows of bricks. So let's go ahead and just duplicate this one, and we'll put it at a differing height, a little bit lower. Oops, 6. So we'll have it. Each row will be on the y-axis 0.4 less than the last. Looks pretty good to me. So come in here, duplicate it again, and put it at what? So 6 would be 5. Oh no, sorry, 5.6. We do 0.4 each way, so 6.4 to 6, 5.6, and then the next one would be 5.2, and then 4.8, then next one would be 4.4, next one would be 4.0. Let's see, how many is that? That's 7. I'll do the next one at 3.6. Oops. Put 6 back at 4. And then the next one will be, let's duplicate this first. Don't make the same mistake again. 3.2. And then we need one more at, what, 2.8? That looks good. It's about 10 rows of bricks. Now, what we want to do is, we know that we want to start at 10.5. So the good thing is about this is that if I were to put a another brick at 10.5, then now we know what our maximum x is going to be. This is going to be one big grid of bricks that starts at negative 10.5 on the x and positive 6.4 on the y, and will end at 10.5 on the x and what is it, 2.8 on the y. So top left is negative 10.5, 6.4. Bottom right is 10.5, 2.8. So we know this. One thing we do not know yet is how far away we want these bricks to be from each other. So we're at 10.5 now. Say it's maybe 9.1 would be a good one. So how much is that? That's maybe 1.4 away from it. So keep doing that until we get to 10.5. So with this, we know what our grid is going to be, and that may have been a little confusing for you, so I'll show you exactly what that means in a script. So first thing we want to do is we want a manager for this entire game. That way we can have one central piece of code that keeps kind of all of our master game logic in one place. So what I like to do is just come up here and I'll create a empty game object and call it game manager. Just like that. And then from there we actually want our game manager script. So from here with my game manager selected, add component, and then name it game manager, language is C#, and then create and add. Give it a second to kind of figure out what's going on there. It makes it. Double click it up here. And we should end up with a script that looks something like this. So from here, the first thing we want to do with our game manager is actually instantiate our grid of bricks. So, oops, must have accidentally deleted my bracket there. So what we want to do is first we want to have a reference to our brick object, which would be the prefab that we made. So let's go ahead and do that. And just name it brick object. Save our script. Okay, and the next thing we really want to do is we want to, let's start creating the function for making our bricks. So let's say void make bricks. Looking good. So from here we want to actually have our variables that we decided upon earlier. So the first one would be public float min y equals, and I think we said it would be 2.8. F just to tell the compiler it's a float. Public float max y equals what, 6.4. I think that's what we decided upon. So we have our min and max y there. Public float min x equals negative 10.5, and we'll do the same for max x, and that would be 10.5, and we're ready to go. So the way we were going to do this is we're going to go ahead and create two for loops nested, and we're going to start by going on the y-axis. So go ahead and start with our y. Just name it y, and we're going to start at the max y and make our way down. And then while y is greater than min y, I think we said we're going to iterate, or we're going to make them go down by 1. Each row is going to be 0.4 units. Oh, y minus equals 0.4. So each row is going to be 0.4 units away from the last. And then we're going to go ahead and do the same for our x, except we're going to start at the minimum x, and these will be our columns. While x is less than max x, then I think we said our columns are going to be spaced 1.4 units away from each other. So x plus equals 1.4f. Okay, looking good. And I think the last thing we want to do is actually instantiate our game object. So it's a function for that. We're going to instantiate our brick object, and we want to tell it what position to instantiate it at. So we're actually going to be using the fourth overload for instantiate. So we would have new vector 3, x, y, and everything in our program, or everything in our game is going to be 0 on the z-axis. So we'll just make that 0, and then I use quaternion.identity just to make sure that the rotation is the same rotation as the prefab. And from there we can save our script, and if we run it, we should, if everything went well, last thing we need to do is actually take our brick object and put it onto our reference there. Everything else should be fine. I'm going to go ahead and save our scene while we're at it. And if I press the play button, we should see a grid of bricks, but we don't. And that would be because I forgot to add my make bricks function to the start. So that's why. Now, if we go back and press the play button, we should see a grid of bricks appear, and we do. Looking good so far. All right. Now, as a last bit of, for our make bricks function, last bit of this video tutorial, I will show you how to add just a little bit of randomization here, because when we start it, we just have like pretty much just a wall of bricks coming in at us. And actually, one thing, if you'd noticed, we're actually not getting our last column of bricks. So we'll go ahead and actually fix that now. What we really need to do in our column is if it is less than or equal to max x. So let's try that now. That's better. And it doesn't actually look like we wanted 10 rows. It looks like we're getting what? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So it doesn't look like we're actually getting our 10th row either. So let's try and see if this works for it. Doesn't look like it's actually working. Count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 9. Okay, so what we could kind of do is come over here, let's inspect our last brick, and if you look at it, it's actually not at 3.2 in the y, it's actually 3.19999 all the way to infinity. So one way to counteract this actually is to use the math.round method, which is in the system namespace. So what we would do is y equals math.round, and we have to actually import, or use the using statement for system. Math.round, this actually takes a double. So we need to cast our y float value to a double, and then minus 0.4f, 0.4 rather. And then what we want to do is, you can see here is the argument, the decimal places that we actually want to round to. We will only want 1. So here, you get another error because it's giving you a double, so we're actually want to take a float. So all we need to do now is cast this into a float. And then let's close our for loop. And y equals y minus 0.4 rounded to the nearest 0.1. And this should, hopefully, give us our, it decides to load, there we go. It should give us the entire grid that we were asking for. It seems like it is. Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Looks good. We're getting all of our columns, all of our rows. Awesome. So now we have this huge wall of bricks. Now, I like my games to be a little random, and hopefully almost everybody does, especially in something like Breakout. You really just don't want to have like a huge wall of bricks, unless that's what you're going for. But for me, that's just not what I'm going for. So what I did in order to create it a little bit more random, I guess, we're gonna just have I made an int, and I called it rand, and then I used random dot, and here you have to specify, because system already has a random class, random.range. So what you would do is just unity engine.random.range, and then we want to go from 0 to, and if you come over here and look, because we're trying to get an int, it returns a random integer number between min inclusive and max exclusive. So what that means is if I were to go between 0 and 1, it will only ever return 0, because the maximum number that it will ever give you is pretty much this number minus 1. So what I would do is give it 2, and the maximum number that will ever come out will be 1. So the next thing I would do is if rand is greater than 0, then I will instantiate my brick object. Let's give it a look. Okay, so it's kind of getting there, but as you can tell, it's only about 50% of the bricks actually get instantiated. It doesn't really look all that great. So one thing that I did to counteract that is, instead of a number between 0 and 1, I just went a number between 0 and 100. Remember that, exclusive. And then what I did was, if rand is greater than, I don't know, say 25, let's say a quarter of the bricks get instantiated. Okay, it looks all right. Maybe a little bit less, so let's try 15. I think that looks good. I like this. It's got a little bit of randomness in it, not too much. 85% of the bricks are being instantiated, give or take, and it looks good. So now we've instantiated our bricks. We have our game manager here doing that, and you can see all of our bricks here in the hierarchy is being instantiated. And that is pretty much a wrap for this video. I'm going to go ahead and just delete all of these other bricks since we don't need them anymore. Save my scene, and I'll see you in the next video.